So in this video, I'm going to be making an 18th century shift. And so I previously already made some panniers, some pocket hoops. So the next step is some more underwear. Why not? So I did a bunch of research and I decided to follow this method of drafting. It's relatively simple. It takes about 5 to 6 measurements. So it'll need your length of the garment, so from your shoulder to your desired length, usually somewhere past your knee. You're across shoulder, so typically you want to take it from the back because that'll give you a little bit more. You want to make sure it accounts for that like roundness of your shoulder blades and your back situation. Your bust circumference, you'll also need your shoulder to, your desired sleeve length measurement, as well as your bicep plus a few inches for the sleeve width. And the last one is your fabric width. In the 18th century, fabrics were woven on looms that are significantly smaller than what we find today. So today we find fabrics that can be 45, 54, 57, 60. There's a lot of range. They're usually pretty wide, but their 18th century counterparts were like 24 to 36 maybe. And when drafting shifts, all the different methods, one common thing was fabric economy, so assuring that all the fabric was being used as efficiently as possible. There weren't going to be any like weird scraps. Usually they would draft it to the complete width of the fabric. Now, if we were to do that with a 60-inch wide fabric that we find today, the shift would just be huge. It would be like my entire arm span. So kind of have to take into account what width you want to adopt from the 18th century and apply it to your modern fabric. So for example, like my fabric is 55 inches. That's after washing, drying, and not taking into account the selvages because they're not pretty. I've decided to make 2 shifts out of my width of fabric. So one's going to be using 29 inches and the other's going to be using 26. So using those numbers, I'm going to base my drafting off of those. So that'll kind of determine like how big my gores are that come out of it, and also the entire like hem width essentially. So with all my measurements in tow, I'm gonna go ahead and pop into Illustrator really quick and create a like cutting guide to follow so that I can get my fabric cut out. The fabric I'm going to use for this project is a cotton linen blend. I think I bought like 8 to 10 yards of this, so I have a bunch of it. So I think this is the perfect project to use it for. It's a mid-weight, it's really nice, it's smooth, and I think it's got a good balance. So instead of going with 100% linen, which tends to be more expensive, I think this was a good option to get. And with that, I'm going to iron it out because it's very wrinkly after being pre-washed and dried, and then start cutting out all my pieces. I have all my pieces cut out now. So I have my 2 sleeve pieces here, 2 gussets for the underarms. I got my gores that are going to be attached to the body. And I also have the set for the other shift all cut out. So now it's time for assembly. Okay, so yesterday I didn't get too much construction done. Spent most of the time drafting out like the cutting layout and then actually cutting the pieces out of my fabric. So what I did get done construction wise was putting the gussets into both my sleeves and then completely finishing it up. So these are completely done, sewed and then felled on the inside, so they look really nice and neat, really clean on the inside. Super happy with how these came out. So I have 2 of those done, and this is only for one of the shifts. I did start adding the gussets into the other ones. I haven't made any further progress on that, however. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to sewing the gores into the body of the shift. So I already have them pinned, offset the same way that I did for the gussets on the sleeves. And I'm going to take it over to my sewing machine. So for this project, I am kind of taking a more theatrical approach to the construction. So what's going to be seen, I will hand sew, but what's not, so any straight stitches like that, machine sewing. So like all the felling I'm doing by hand. So yeah, I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine. I'm going to sew up these sides and then figure out the next steps from there, which will probably be determining how to add the sleeves into this garment. So yeah. Okay, so pretty much every day after work this week I spent sewing the seams, hand felling the inside so that they were all nice and clean, no raw edges. And as you can see, I think Everything looks super nice and neat on the inside. I'm like super proud, especially with these gores. They were kind of tricky given that there was just so many seams intersecting at one point, and it was kind of tricky to get everything to lay as flat as possible. And it's not too bulky. Come on, focus. It's not too bulky, pretty good, I would say. I hadn't really done a lot of gores or gussets or anything of this nature before, so I generally just took this very slowly, making sure that, you know, everything lined up, and then when it came to felling, just taking my time and using lots and lots and lots of pins. So I think that whole section came out really nice. So that's the inside, and then here's the outside. So I think it came out really nice. And the same goes for the gussets in the underarms. These were kind of tricky, especially setting them into the body. But I think overall, you know, it came out very nice. Nice little gusset on the inside. So got a little tricky at the inseam join here, as well as joining it to the body. There's a little bit extra bulkiness, but I managed to get it to pretty much be flat. I don't think there's really any drag marks from the outside. There's a little bit of pulling, but I think that's just the nature of how, you know, what happens when you set in something like this. So the next step is to deal with the neckline. I have a little feeling that I made this a bit too small for me. I'm hoping that's not the case. I'm hoping that once I cut like an opening in the top here, that it will be fine. But overall, I think I'm really happy with the shape of it and how everything's come out. So it's time to cut a hole in this neck and throw it over and hope for the best. Okay, it's on, it fits. I was really worried because I kept measuring it on the table, and for some reason my brain kept going, that doesn't seem like enough ease. That definitely doesn't seem like enough ease. Are you sure you measured and drafted everything right? And I was like, I'm pretty sure. So anyways, I was a bit worried that it wasn't gonna fit, but there is actually plenty of ease. I mean, it could probably be a little looser. I think generally this might have been the fit. I am not 100% sure, but it fits, and I'm not like compressed or anything through the chest. Like, I can move. There's plenty of space through the hips, so that's really good. So for the neckline, I'm probably gonna reference some accent stays. Usually they're pretty wide and low, maybe like, I think typically maybe ½ inch above like your stays line. I don't have any stays to kind of ponder where or how low to make it, so I'm kind of wondering if I should hold off on completely finishing the neckline until I have my stays made. I might do it just to have it finished, but I also don't want to cut away too much, like, oh, this conundrum. So the next step for me is to basically do everything that I did with this one and do it to this one again. So I went ahead and threw this back on, and while looking at a mirror, I pinned a general neck shape based on where I think my stays are gonna hit, and just kind of drew like a gentle curve. I might have to square it off a bit more, but I'm just going with this for now to see how it looks. Because I cut this already to get it over my head, I'm gonna at least start at this point where I've cut it at, but I might kind of go a little bit higher here just in case. I don't want to cut too low, because once you cut it, you can't go back. And I did the same for the back, but I haven't curved the corners yet. But because I cut this already, I'm just gonna start there, see what I like, and then go from there. Okay, so I went ahead and I did 2 more changes to the neckline from where I originally cut it. The first is that I lowered it about 1/2 inch, and then the second was I made it more square. So it used to have a bigger curve here. I made it a more rounder neckline. I made the curve, you know, closer to the point, so it's a little bit more square. Next is to fillet, like finish the edges, so it's going to be folded over about a quarter, so 1/2 inch. It's actually going to be a 1/2 inch lower than where it currently is, and same with like the neck width. It's going to be a half, well, technically an inch wider, because 1/2 inch on one side, 1/2 inch on the other side. I think this is where I'm going to stop. I'm not going to lower it anymore. I'm not going to widen it. I think given that it's going to be folded over a 1/2 inch is going to be make it a little lower than I think I was planning on it. Can't do anything more about it, so I'm going to stop there. I think this is good. I'm going to go ahead and finish off the edge, and then we're done.